Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Zenitsu, and you're listening to the Digi Talks podcast, the show that covers various news from topics and meta developments and everything in between for the fine folks who love the Digimon trading card game. Just as a quick reminder, I do try to stream this live over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu. Right now, that's a little bit up in the air based on current life schedules, but fear not, because it's still uploaded on YouTube under the channel of Zenitsu, as well as being on various podcasting platforms like Spotify for your viewing and listening pleasure. So please feel free to do the social media doobly-doo thing and just leave that rating, like, follow, subscribe, review, or whatever, depending on the platform that you're listening on. It really does help support the podcast. So today I am back with Jay Stewart, and we're going to be doing something a little bit different today. We're going to basically just going to be taking a look at 2.5, I guess more specifically the BT20 cards, and kind of do a couple of like Theorycraft deck building. So I think that would be pretty fun and interesting just to see like, oh, what can we do with probably one deck each and kind of figure stuff out. Not necessarily on the fly, because we do have a little bit of help from Japan to act as a good reference point, but just seeing what and how impactful these new cards are for their respective decks. But before we get into that, speaking of decks, we have the question of the week. As always, feel free to leave your answer to the question of the week down in the comments below. And the question of the week this time is, what deck would you like to see get more support? So obviously we know that there's a lot of decks getting a lot of support, but obviously not everything is going to be getting support. So take it away, Juice Stewart, with the deck you want to see get support that current really isn't getting any.
Yeah, so for me, I think one deck that should get a little bit more support is probably Ravemon. The last time we got support for it was BT13. Yeah, BT13. And the fact that Mirage, Shine Greymon are the two decks that out of the Saviors line that have really gotten a crazy good amount of support. And then Rosemon, you could kind of technically even argue that it was a meta deck and still kind of is at times because of the plant engine. The problem with Ravemon is it was relying on this whole idea of making your opponent mill out their own cards in their hand, and you would get to just kind of also delete your big guy and make him come back on the field. It it's a deck that had a lot of potential, but it didn't get a really good amount of use because it was still relatively fair for the most part. Unlike how Shine Greymon could Evo for free from the Tamer or even swing with Tamers, and then Mirage just Evoing up cheap and unsuspending and attacking, and then the Vegetation Engine deck just being able to Evo really cheap. Like Ravemon kind of struggled with what it wanted to try to do because it couldn't really do what everybody else was doing as efficient.
Yeah, it lacked a lot of the punch that other decks had, because like even if you just think about the burst modes where it's just like there's nothing really, like, it can burn a security, but the opponent has to be under specific conditions in order for like Ravemon's abilities to really start to shine. And then it does kind of do like what we see a lot of other decks do, just a lot worse, just because again it's reliant on the opponent's hand size, which it's a discard based deck, and as we've seen before with discard based decks, they tend to struggle because of just the sheer amount of draw Digimon has. And then obviously compared to other decks, it just doesn't have that punch. It's not like it has security attack +1 or unsuspend to be able to really be able to deal the damage. And the idea of your Digimon being this ninja, disappearing, coming back, again, we already see a better version of that with Invisimon. But they did kind of get some support with the promo Falcomon and the promo Saberdramon, but that really wasn't that great of support. I mean, the Falcomon's a huge boon because of just how Ravemon works, but Ravemon himself, like you said, he's too weak. He's not doing anything impactful enough to really warrant you wanting to play him past for funsies. He had some pretty good stuff going on with like the 3-cost Keenan Tamer. That saw a decent amount of like experimental play. But yeah, it's just his playstyle is interesting, just not great. because of all of the other effects attached to them. Because even with BT20, we see Ghosts doing something very similar, except better, because it has the punch, it has the removal, it has way better board spammy potential when your Digimon dies. Like, it's the complete package for what a self-deleting Digimon is trying to do.
Hmm.
At least that's like my perspective and understanding on where its shortcomings are. And then also, if you look at the support, like you said, um, he got literally supported twice, once in EX4, once in BT13, and then outside of that, two promos, and that's basically all the support he's ever gotten. Versus Shine Greymon, which there's multiple iterations of. Even Mirage, that just is incidentally using some of the best blue cards in the game and abusing the ever living crap out of them. Like, even though it's not direct support, it's indirect support to actually make the strategy stronger. And Ravemon really has been resistant towards that and hasn't really found a good um, a good healthy mix to be able to support himself more. But I think
Yeah,
Rave is a good one. Definitely more Rave support would be nice. Maybe shifting the playstyle a little bit away from the discard focused stuff. I think like if it didn't need to discard and the Ravemon that came back had Rush, maybe that would be better. Or like something in the deck to have Rush.
I mean, something I could even see the deck doing is literally if it just had a Ravemon where it's literally maybe only had security attack +1 and the new keyword execute, that could potentially be even just good in itself right there.
Yeah, I'm trying to see when Ravemon comes back. Uh
At the
on delete if the
end of your
opponent.
opponent's turn, if I remember correctly. So that way you can still attack with it when it comes back into play.
Yeah, I mean it has jamming. It just doesn't have any like other punch factor, and it's only 11k, which also isn't that great with no real ways to be able to like clear DP walls. So like it is a deck that would tend to struggle as a result. It's a deck that wants itself to die, but it wants itself to die due to its own effect, not due to battle and other circumstances. Um, but yeah, so going with that very off-beaten trend, the deck that I would want to see support is Rasenmon. So
The
Rasen,
Senmon.
yes, going all the way back to the toxic days of BT7, where Rasenmon was not even playable, and he got one update in BT8 and was still not playable. I think like what Rasenmon was trying to do was really cute, where you're trying to use like Rasenmon to basically just line up this really convoluted OTK with Digiburst. It wasn't good, but it was funny, and I appreciate with like how it was playing around with security, because the lower your security, the cheaper your cards would cost, which obviously we've seen in various other forms. And he did get kind of like
Oh,
some, yeah, he did get some indirect support with yellow data stuff, but maybe like that's something I would want to see more of the exploration of, is just a rebooted version of Rasenmon that would still like allow you to use the BT8 card like Fury mode. Um, and then that could give you some really interesting transition points to use some fun level sevens.
yeah,
Because
sorry.
there's a lot
I had
of,
to look it up.
yeah, there's a lot of like yellow and purple support, because Fury mode, like even if they don't do a new Fury mode, they could like just a new Rasen base would do wonders just to make this card more playable. Um, and I think it's a really fun and interesting card.
Yeah, because if I remember correctly, Rasenmon, he's the porcupine from the mobile game, right?
Correct. Like
Did he have like his own official tamer? Like, I know you obviously were playing as his tamer, but was there like a character design or anything that was Rasenmon's tamer or non visible?
I'm sure there is one. Like not that I can recall though. I barely played the mobile game. Not that I could play it anymore because it's shut down, but I digress. I just found his design visually and mechanically to be interesting. And it's unfortunate that he is currently attached to the now dead Digiburst mechanic. And I think like with the failure of Rasenman helped basically say we're going to give up on this mechanic. I mean, there's obviously a lot going on to failed mechanics that they're not going back to. But he was definitely trying to do something really interesting.
Yeah, because I mean, I hate to keep using like the new keywords that liberators have, but like literally, you could even technically throw in the keyword fragment, like fragment of his pin needles and everything dropping, so to say, could be the idea of how you could theoretically tie that in. Even just getting to try to use that keyword and revamping of how all because he does already have a lot of digiburst effects that I'm assuming if it's obviously got the big boss monster that could digiburst, and even probably giving him a new tamer that kind of works similar to close, where you could potentially take. Well, I don't know how close you want to get to the tamer close, but just something like that would even probably give it make it good again if you wanted to go BT7 support.
Right. So like there's different avenues on what they could do to revamp what he is doing, and like obviously he's not even going to be the focus of anything anymore. At least not for a while, but I thought like there is enough interesting tools for us to work with to reinvigorate what he could do based on what they already were trying to do before. Um, so that's kind of just my take on it in terms of like a very really offbeat deck that I find to be interesting. So yeah, as always, feel free to tell us your answers down in the comments below. There's a ton of like lost or forgotten decks, archetypes, Digimon uh, that they've made and not really done anything with. So it'll be nice and interesting to hear or read what your guys's the audience's perspective is. But before we go into the grand topic, this is generally where we have the meta report. I'm gonna report that literally nothing has changed in the meta. I guess like just kind of going over it really quickly, even though like the meta is going to be changing in like 3 weeks or something at the end of the month. Basically, if you really just want to be hardcore competitive, purple hybrids, um, Fenrir Lugamon, Demon Lords. I'm forgetting a purple deck. Dog Pile, Purple Dog Pile, which tends to lean heavier towards Leviamon. Those are some of the better decks of the format. On top of Mirage is still a really good deck. Magnamon X is still a really good deck. And then you have Gallantmon obviously being one of the big new forerunners, along with Dinomon, and that's like the main bulk of where the meta currently is at. You do have like some other decks that are in the meta as well, like Imperial is still not terrible, just a little bit harder to get going, but not terrible. Same thing with like Rabbits being the only green deck that has had any semblance of competitive success outside of Dinomon, but again, I digress. So there's still a lot of other decks to play in this environment. So keep that under consideration when you're going into the Ultimate Cups that are coming up. So yeah, just good to know that nothing has changed except for the inclusion of Dinomon and Gallantmon as the only real meta relevant changes. But we kind of knew that going into it. But outside of that, we do have some news. So I'm going to be pulling up, I guess, some Facebook spoilers on just some competitive stuff because we got more prizes. So by prizes, I mean reprints. So if anyone's not following Digimon Card Game English version on Facebook, please do so, because that's where you get a lot of information, such as what I'm literally bringing up here. So we do know that in the next event pack for the 2025 season, so this is not including the Ultimate Cups that are coming up in February, those are technically part of the 2024 season. The reason why even though we're in 2025 is the 24 season is from Worlds to Worlds, which is in March, so the competitive season, like the new competitive season, kind of just starts in March, post Worlds. So that's why, like, it's a little bit offset. But we know that we are going to be getting Analog Youth as a really good reprint. In the participation pack for the regionals in season 1, we're going to be getting Gatsumon as a good reprint. This is the Floodgate. We know some judges cards. They spoil, obviously, some alt art cards that are coming up. Don't pay attention to their deck lists. They're usually pretty bad. I mean, they highlight top 8 deck lists from their tournaments, but when it comes to their own deck lists, just ignore them. The community does a way better job at figuring stuff out. But we know that in the event pack, we're going to be getting a reprint of Protoform. I really hope that they just hit this card, because I'm tired of seeing it. But again, I'm a big advocate for accessibility. So just the fact that we are getting a reprint of a high value staple for basically any X antibody deck is very good. Definitely is going to be a big driving factor to make people want to play in these events. Same thing with the Analog Youth. It's just another good generic staple. Good reprint. Same thing with the Floodgates. They're actually picking really good cards for us to be encouraged and want to participate. Even though, like, the Otamamon isn't necessarily like that great of a reprint, because it's just a reprint of a uncommon and a set that wasn't short printed. Just the fact that it's a good staple in an alt art will drive value for it regardless. That is seeing play. Then we have Quartzmon reprint. So not necessarily the most meta card, but still not a bad card. Kokuamon is getting a reprint for the participation pack. Quartzmon is obviously going to be in the event pack again. But Kokuamon's going to be in the regional participation pack. So this is the can't ignore Digivolution requirements. Probably one of the weaker Floodgates, but it could still come up. I would have preferred probably something like a Zenimon or even Chumon, just because I think those are, like, the memory blockers are better. Or even Chikurimon, because Solarmon had a reprint, but Chikurimon didn't. I'm talking about, like, the Floodgate Chikurimon, not like BT6 Chikurimon.
Yeah, the one that you can't reduce play costs.
Yes, that one didn't actually have a reprint. We already knew about the signature cards, and then all of the SPs. So the lottery stuff, I'm just scrolling up. But one of the more important cards that we're getting a reprint of is Shadramon. So this was a very hard to get promo. And it's nice to see that it's getting a reprint, because, again, I'm a big advocate for accessibility. This was very smart for the giant debacle that they probably were 100% aware of was going on with the scuffedness of the promos that came out, like EX5 and BT14. Like, they knew that they were probably scuffed, so... But it's nice that we're actually getting a reprint when we actually need the reprint. Most of the time when they reprint cards, it's usually old and too late, and it doesn't matter. But this one actually is properly timed. So good on that.
Yeah, especially with the fact that they're the latest Liberator comic series. Literally, I think a solid 2 chapters is literally about this Imperial Virus deck alone. So, it's like if you're dedicating this much hype behind Imperial Virus, you might want to give the players the best possible chance of getting the cards.
I mean, the interesting thing is that, yes, it's in an event pack, so it's going to be with Ultimate Cups as well, but tournament caps are reduced for this season. So I'm praying that just means we have more events. I doubt that what it's actually going to mean, but I'm very hopeful that we just get more events to compensate for the dramatic reduction of the player cap, because we were at like at
512.
no, so we were 512 was what we were at 2 years ago. This past year, we were at like 384 or something like that. It was some
Yeah,
really weird
that's correct.
arbitrary number. And now we're going down to like 256. So it's unfortunate, but again, if they make it up with more events, then I'm totally okay with that.
Or
Uh,
even the fact that if they could just do more store regional tournaments, because I'm pretty sure that was like extremely successful on Bandai and even for local stores to be hosting those as well.
Yeah, so like these reprints are great and dandy and all, but again, part of accessibility is how accessible is it to get these reprints. So it's nice that they announced them, but if there's not going to be a big enough influx of these cards to one, make the secondary price of the cards drop, and two, have players actually have the ability to participate in the events to try to get these cards, then the reprints really aren't going to be doing a whole lot. And we've seen that in the past before. So it's all about the how. Like, what is the approach on how we're going to be getting these cards? And we don't have the full context to that to know how they're going to be doing the tournament structure. But going over some more of the reprints, this is one I actually just bought a playset of, so I'm like upset but not upset because it's a very good card, and that's Rivals Barrage from Starter Deck 14. So that's getting a reprint in the event packs. Oops. So cool on that. Then these are just Altar Tamers. One that I actually wasn't like, it came to a shock that they were reprinting Metal Greymon from BT10. This is the Blue Flare card. It's arguably the best and most important card in the entire deck, so it makes sense that they would eventually want to reprint it, but I'm just shocked that they actually reprinted it. Because it wasn't on my bingo card. Then some of the other reprints. Is this a reprint? No, that's just BT19 stuff. Doraemon got a reprint from BT7, a very staple egg for a lot of decks, not just Alphamon. That's a good reprint.
Yeah, it's a good reprint, but this I'm going to be a little biased here, but the Altar version that you got in BT11, it's like you can't, it's nowhere close to it. So, but it is a nice reprint to have. So if players want to get a foil version of it, they still can.
Yeah. And I mean the BT7 Altar from the booster set itself was a pretty good looking card too. And then we also got a LM reprint. So we already knew this was get a reprint, but we didn't know what the card actually looked like, and that's going to be the secret rare BT13 Gallantmon. Remember, we said last week that the EX cards are going to be coming in as a box topper for BT21. So that's where this card's going to be reprinted in, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. This is just such a good card, not only just as like a tech one of for a good portion of decks, but just for Gallantmon, like, and Royal Knights, it's a very, very strong card. So that, and it being a secret rare, definitely holds a lot of pristine, one will say. So that's a good reprint. Uh, Outside of that, yeah, we just are slowly getting some of the starter deck reprint of the scrambles revealed. But I'm liking the direction of all of the reprints that they have shown. They seem all very meta relevant cards in a timely fashion in which we are actually going to be able to use these cards. So good on Bandai for actually giving players what they want. So, with that out of the way, I guess we could finally get into deck theory crafting. So, I guess before we do that, we should probably talk about like how we actually go about building decks. So, Jay Stewart, what's kind of your process on building decks? Because everyone builds decks differently.
Yeah, so I know some players like to use Japan, like Digimon meta to look at how Japan is, or even just look at Japan results and everything. To me, I kind of don't like the idea of that because our formats are all typically most of the time are always different than Japan. I mean, there's like some instances where they are very similar, but sometimes there is metas where it's just like we are different. So it's just mostly what I typically like to do is I'll look at the deck, I'll see like, hey, this is what the deck wants to do, kind of build it how Bandai intended, and then I'll kind of break it down and go, okay, well, this card isn't as good as this other card I can use, or I'll try to go, okay, how do I increase my consistency and go from there kind of situation.
Yeah, that's usually a pretty good place to start. I think I did like a really old video where it kind of like describes how you could go about building decks, and literally just reading all of the cards in the particular archetype that Bandai is trying to give you. That usually is going to be the easiest way to try to understand what is this deck trying to do and how could I best support it. Because sometimes it needs a lot of help and sometimes it needs barely any. But without that base level of knowledge of what the core gameplay, like the core line, the play line is for the deck, uh, you just need to have that info. Um, which is why I am going to be guilty as charged. I have currently been using Japanese data to help with my deck building process. I still have to obviously read the card and understand how the deck is trying to function, but at least like a lot of the legwork is already kind of just done for me. So the big site that I use when it comes to Japanese data more specifically is CG Guides. I do not use Digimon Meta. I hate Digimon Meta's website. It's good for certain things, but not for what I'm looking for. So CG Guides is what I use on top of actually just going to Twitter and looking up the hashtag. Because that's all CG Guide does is it's a Japanese website, so Google will automatically translate the vast majority of it for you, but it just filters a Twitter hashtag and it just shows you things that are attached to that hashtag. So, just as an example, they have all of the different formats sorted, and then you could search by deck color or deck name. And when you hit search, it'll show you the images of the decks that have topped in Japan. So, granted, when we're looking at Japanese stuff, you have to take it with a giant grain of salt, in my opinion, because of the fact that it's Japanese data. The majority of it is basically locals level data, where it's just like, oh yeah, this deck took first place out of 6 people. It's just like, and it was best of one. It's not necessarily the most trustworthy of data to really formulate like a good opinion on if this list is highly competitive or not until like it really starts to prove itself. Which is why like you'll see some absolutely wild stuff in Japan, like absolutely wild. But they also tend to play differently as well. At least like Japan itself. I know the other Asian territories that are stuck with the Japanese version, some of them do end up playing best of threes, and you kind of have to filter and weed out, which can be relatively difficult if you don't know what you're doing or where you're looking, on what's actually been competitively successful with actual good results in Japan. But CG Guide is like my dumbed down version of it, and that's usually where I start. And
Yeah,
then
I don't think there's anything wrong with how you do it either, because sometimes I'll even do that too, where I'll look at JP, like, Japan's meta and go, okay, how did they play Alphamon in that? And just kind of build from there.
yeah. I mean, as of right now, there literally was no real reason to break a system that wasn't broken, where it's just like, oh, they did a lot of the discovery and legwork, so that way we can just further iterate on it and make it more competitive. Like, we've been on record for doing that for literally years since the game's inception. Take security control as an example. People experimented with it like all the way back in BT4, and then by the time like we got to our BT5, we took that experimentation And further, no, it was BT6 that it really started to bring home, because that was when reinforcing memory boost was like at max power, and that was absolutely dumb. But whatever. It's that level of experimentation that they start and we iterate on to come to a better conclusion on what this deck for this format is supposed to do. So we do have some Japanese data to start with. You can kind of see like, oh, right now, based on that hashtag search on CG Guide, like there's 6 purple Imperial Dramon deck lists that we could look at in order to start figuring out what's the common trends and threads that they're using. And then we also have like the other component to how I build decks is looking at what was previously successful in the latest iteration of that deck. So some decks do tend to change more than others, but some of them don't necessarily change that much. So like Imperial is probably going to be a really good example where it's just like we did get a whole new evolution line, but we already had some relative success previous. So that way we could take what was successful currently and then compare that to what Japan is currently thinking about. And we could draw our own conclusions based on what those two data sets are doing and look like. So I guess we could just start with Imperial, just because that one's definitely a bigger, more popular deck that people want to obviously try to play around with. So we're gonna kind of do like a little bit of a live deck building in a sense, like a live deck building session. So, how do you want to start with this deck?
So I think for me, the like what I wanted like to do, and I've already kind of started theory crafting of how I could even build it. But for me, I think one of the things that is a must for the deck is potential. I want to say is you gotta have 4 of the Dino Beamons from BT16. The reason I say that is because we've seen how partition has really helped keep blue green Imperials on like a very good tier 1 meta and everything because of that particular keyword, just being able to spit back your bodies out and just do it all over again. To me, I just think that's a must to have.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up what was the last successful competitive version of this deck, just to kind of like have a good point of reference from the English side what we were doing, because that didn't change in EX8 at all, in terms of like the card pool that it had to work with, because it's been working essentially with the same cards since BT17. Yeah, that was the last time Imperial got support, which means that Virus Imperial got a couple of key tools that it wanted to try to abuse. Here it is. All right, that's a store regional, but I'll use it anyway as the base. Let's go export text, and then import. So they were also on 4 of the English list that I was looking at was also on 4 Dino B. So this is the point where I would probably cross-reference with Japan to see like what they're doing and what some of their common cards are. I think the majority of them are also on 4 Dino B. So I think like 4 Dino B, the BT17 one is correct. Like
Is it BT17? I thought it was BT16, but
or yeah, BT16, my bad.
yeah, no, you're
So that so 4 of this Dino B is indeed correct. I don't know why that's in Japanese, but whatever. Um, and kind of going off of that, I think 4 of like the other big staples for the deck is going to be 4 of the BT16 Wormmon and 4 Shadramon promos.
absolutely.
Like I those are just main stats. Like any other level 4 could just eat their heart out to those cards, because the Wormmon lets you digivolve from your trash, so you could digivolve into the Shadramon. The Shadramon plays out the Wormmon. Then the Wormmon lets you digivolve from the trash to be able to line up your DNA into whatever level 5 that way. So, like, that's just the key core component of how you're enabling the combo to begin with. I think we could take out Valkyriermon from this list. We could probably also take out the Gallantmon from it, too. Then what else? So I already like used a base.
Yeah,
Um,
so I think the other thing to have too is the Minomons. These are sport participation promo cards that we got and everything. Purple egg that's literally meant for the Imperial deck. Plus, since it's purple, it will have the Warmon text box of Evo on top of Minomon for free, so you don't have to pay that one cost Evo.
yeah, and this card was also in the like special booster, not like
Oh yeah, that's right.
special booster 2.0, but the limited booster or whatever it was called. Where you got
Special
the
release.
yeah
Something like that. The
what
one with
the
Mr. Mons.
yeah, the one with all of the alt art reprints, um, and the LM cards that we were missing. This was part of the card that was in that booster. So it's a pretty easy and accessible card for the most part. Um, so looking at some Japanese lists, the new Wormmon. What does the new Wormmon do?
The new Warmon, it's kind of a. Give me 1 second here. I gotta pull up the thing because I can't really. 1 second, somehow zoom in on my own deck build that I have. But I don't think the new Warmon is anything too crazy.
Oh,
If I can find it, here it is. So it's a on play by trashing one card in your hand. Give one of your opponent's Digimon on deletion, lose a memory till the end of the turn, and then it has the inheritable of retaliation, and it can evo for free on top of a level 2 purple or red. So
I
it's
don't think this card's that great.
yeah, because even in my own deck build that I had, it's like a one of kind of thing.
Yeah, because I think like honestly, just sticking in archetype and just focusing on the EX3 cards are like really good.
You mean
So
EX4?
or
Or no, you're right,
yeah,
EX3.
it's
Yeah.
EX3. So I think like honestly, the two Wormmons are probably must haves at four ofs. You could probably take it or leave it with having an extra rookie because I think like the EX3 Vmon is still just kind of decent as well. Um,
So for me, I will definitely agree on the EX3 Warmon. That's definitely a 4 of because it's a nice searcher to help search your cards that you need, getting a free trade, red or purple, and then get your Imperial one. The one Vmon I actually was thinking of, even though it would be a one cost to Evo, is the Vmon from BT16 actually.
I've seen people use that, so it's just whatever rookie count you want to do. Um, because I think like just between the EX3 and then the BT16 worm, like it you might not need it, and then the one cost Evo also sometimes just sucks. Not gonna lie, but it's not like it's a bad card.
Yeah, because the way I saw when I was building the deck was if you combo the BT16 Beamon with the Wormon and everything, Wormon digivolves, Beamon sees that, and then you get that memory back. It like we kind of saw how good uh the B like the blue green Imperial deck is able to just keep turn by reducing its evil costs and getting the memory back and everything. So that's where my mindset was when it comes to building the deck.
Yeah, no, it's not a bad card. I just think it's more situationally useful because like again, the one cost Evo really sucks. It's only really good when you play it out for free off of Davis and Ken when you're going to be comboing with your Wormmon. Like it's not bad. It's just again, in my perspective, situationally good. Because looking at some other people's builds, they don't necessarily hardcore use that. all that much. Most of them are literally just focused on the EX3 cards and then the BT16, because I think like depending on how you're going about your build, you're gonna have to trim the rookies somewhere, and this is the easiest card to trim.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were running
I,
a higher rookie count, and now because of the upped consistency, we don't necessarily need to run that much higher of a rookie count past like 12.
yeah, because there's nothing wrong with the whole VMon from EX3 because again, it's consistency, but it also helps set up your trash for the plays that you do want to do as well.
Yeah, what does the new red Vmon do? During your turn, when one of your purple Digimon is played, this Digimon can Digivolve into a... Oh, it's literally the exact same thing, just for less. Oh, it's whenever any of your purple Digimon are played. Okay, so when it Digimon, so the condition is different on where you're going to be saving your one. But I think like for the playstyle of the deck, this probably is just better. Just because of the not needing the Evo cost uh, of one. Because it still does essentially the same thing. The inheritable's still plus 2k. It's still saving you memory on reducing the cost of your evolution. So I would prefer running the new BT20 VMon over um the
16.
BT16 if I were to
Yes.
run extra rookies. So we'll throw in the BT21 just to kind of see like where the rest of the deck is to see if we actually need that card or not. Because when it
So
comes to the level 4s, because basically the level 3s are pretty much set in stone. Like, this is probably some of the better level 3s that you could run. The majority of them literally just being the old cards.
yeah, so if you're gonna be running the BT20 VMon, then I would almost argue that you need to run the new option card delay. They have the Emperor Dragon of Calamity because this works hand in hand with that VMon so well.
I mean, it also works with the Tamer, too. Like, the Davis Ken Tamer, because it plays out a Digimon. Like, it plays out a Wormmon. So
Oh
that
yeah,
way you could just use it in combination with the Wormmon you're playing out. But Japan isn't necessarily running that high of a Davis and Ken. I think for this deck, like 2 is probably the most I would run. Just because there is some other really good cards, like you said, the option. Japan is experimenting with the NPC Tamer. I don't know if I like it or not. Like, I think it's cute, but I like maybe Matt's still just better because I don't know. I know like what the when it comes to tamers, they're all running analog youth. Like analog youth is just one of the best tamers in the game, hands down, especially for this playstyle, because your Digimon, your Digimon has the possibility of killing itself, and then analog just resets yourself.
yeah,
So
I could definitely see that for sure. Because I know another tamer that we originally used to play was the tie from BT1, and that was practically when one of your red Digimon with 4 more sources gets security tech +1, so it helped do the checks, so to say.
yeah. Um, and then I guess we should. So we could probably figure out tamers later. I just know we're probably going to be running Davis and Ken in analog, because like NPC is something the Japan has been playing with as the idea of like, oh, it's kind of like a Davis and Ken where you just hide one of your Digimon and you could just use its effect to play it out. Um, I could probably just do white tamer, and there's not a lot of them, so let's see what NPC actually does. Where'd it go? BT8, BT20. Oh, here we go. So NPC, by placing a level 3 Digimon from under this, you get to draw one, so it helps cycle. If you don't have a Digimon, you get to play at the start of your main. If you don't have a Digimon, you get to play 1 3 cost from under this tamer for free, then delete this tamer. It's okay. Like I'm not saying it's crazy. It's seems just okay. I don't know if I would rather just have a different tamer though, but it can help you set up out of nowhere. So like the idea probably is just to hide the Wormmon, the BT16. Um, but I guess like the biggest contention point is going to be in like the level 4s and level 5s. So before we work on fixing the tamers, um, the level 4s and the level 5s is something that a lot of people are going to be questioning on because this is where things get kind of interesting with the different options that we have. Uh, Japan is Japan. They are running some really weird stuff. So they're playing around with the new Worm and Stingmon.
Yeah,
Um,
I can't get down with that one, honestly.
so the new Stingmon, you get to delete one of the opponent's level 3 Digimon. Then, if it's your turn, 2 of your Digimon can DNA into Imperial Digimon. Oh, into a card with Imperial Digimon in its name, or free in its trait from your hand. So this just lets you DNA into. I mean, like the Stingmon's not bad. I'll say the Stingmon's not bad. I think the Stingmon is way better than the BT16 Stingmon if anyone was actually running that. What we were running was just the old Flame and the old Shadramon, but I guess like there's an argument to go like a 2-2 on the Flame and the Shad, and then 2 on at least like the Sting. What's the XV doing? Delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 3000 DP or less, and then basically do the same thing. So DP increase. Do these? Oh, these just have end of turn DNA. So like, you could kind of play around with like, hey, we could do 2 and 2, and then 2 and 2. Kind of like toolbox yourself. With the level 4s, but I think like for the promo Shadramon's like a must. That card's just too
Yeah.
good. Um,
I think for I think what the important thing right now is to decide if it's going to be purple base. Then I would suggest running the Shadramon from the EX3 along with probably the Stingmon. Then, well, you can't even do the Stingmon, like because you still need the red card, so you would have to do the Shadramon, and then maybe do the 2-2 Stingmon. But um, if you're gonna be running a lot more red option cards, then you might want to use the Flame Dramon more.
yeah, I think like because the deck naturally wants to lean heavier into purple, like I probably would I mean you still unfortunately have to run red. It's just the amount of red is the real question. So I'm just looking at some lists. So because the promo shot counts as both colors, which is what makes it like obviously the best level 4. But we have the XV. I'm just wondering, like, do I have to delete the Digimon? Delete one of them. Then if it's your turn. So okay, so you still get this part of the effect even if you don't delete. It's just it gives you free control. Versus digivolving again. So it's kind of a toss up. I think like for now I'm just gonna leave it at like 2-2, 2-2, and then 4 of the promo. Just because you could try to like toolbox depending on what you see. Um and then how many I'm just looking at other builds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, but they're running a god. This deck is weird. Like this one's running a Gato. I mean, I get the point of the Gato, but like, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with Gatomon, from BT16.
Yeah, that's a
Uh,
little hard. Like I understand why it's like to help probably prevent the Leviat targets and everything when you play out by effects, I guess. But as
yeah,
you kind of said last week, if they have more than one in the trash, you're kind of SOL.
yeah. No, I'm okay with just keeping it simple at the straight up 2s, and then Obviously, this being basically like like the first iteration or the first pass. Playtesting and experimentation will really dictate which ones you should really focus on. Because like these aren't bad at being able to kill like floodgates. The BT16 ones, or not BT16, BT20 ones for the level fours. So like they have their utility. So, but they are a little bit more situational than the EX3 cards. So I think like just starting off 2222 is fine. When it comes to the level fives, this is where things get a little bit harder.
So for me, I think what you need to do, because depending if you're even going to run the Imperial Ace, I think you need to do, well, obviously we already said 4 Dino B from BT16. I would say 3 of the, what's this guy, Paildramon from the BT20, and 1 Dino B from the BT20.
Um, so just a 1-1 on the new ones.
No, 3 of the new Paildramon and 1 of the new Dino B. Or
Uh,
you could even just run 4 Flame Dramons, or not 4 Flame Dramons, 4 of the Paildramons. But I like the idea of having the inheritable of the Dino be preventing option checks and everything. So that's kind of where it was like kind of making me want to lean a little bit into that.
doesn't one of the Imperial fighter modes already do that though?
That's the one from the EX3,
Yeah. Wouldn't we still
but
be
it's like
playing
the
that?
new we would. It's just kind of like the depending on the situation. Because to me, the uh, Imperial Dramon Fighter mode from BT20, the fact that it has the players can't play by effects and everything. I mean, we've seen a lot of cards that like to do that now and everything. You got the scrambles, you got the Leviamon, you got the whole dog engine of that purple cards and everything. Like, there's a lot of decks out there, so that's kind of where I was leaning into that.
I get you. I think that card is pretty good. What did I type in? Imperial? Oh, I need to scroll down more. Yeah. We probably are still running the uh old dragon mode at least. Like the ace is cute,
Oh, for
but
sure.
yeah, the ace is cute, but I think like the old dragon mode still is just really good, especially going into the new fighter mode. It just makes it really easy. What's Japan currently looking at doing? So it looks like they are also on the new combo pair. Uh, I think like maybe they run one of the old Pail, like the EX3 Pail, just to be able to play out a Dino B, and then when it gets deleted, at least like just for the security attack plus also is relevant. Um, yeah, I think they just play at least like maybe one of the old Pail. So that way they can try to keep even on names. Um, I'm just trying to like cross reference and see what they're up to. Uh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think they're.
Oh, wait, I realized I had that's not the BT21 I had on my list. It's the yeah, it is the old one. My bad.
Yeah, I was gonna. I mean, the inheritable of security tech plus one is still relevant. I mean, we could do like 2 and 2 of the, because I think like the Dino B is still just not good enough. Like it doesn't feel good enough. It feels like it's one of the weaker ones. At
Yeah, because I
least
know there.
like the BT16. I could be wrong, but like option effects doesn't matter as much now because I mean, sure, turning off the opponent's ability to have access at whatever um, delayed options would be playing, but I don't necessarily think it matters as much.
Yeah, I can see the argument for that one too. Because I mean, because at my locals, I don't even think really option cards even came up really that much in the security.
How many is this running? This is like I think maybe one is good enough, but that's putting our level fives up to 9, which is actually maybe that's fine, just so we could guarantee to see like a DNA level 5 somewhere at the very least. And the protection it gives isn't like terrible either. So maybe 9 level 5s is okay just to start.
Yeah, because I mean, especially if you have ways to like mill the cards in the trash and everything, just making sure you have your setup too. I mean, it's not that bad because I think even the new Dino B has an on play, so even if you have to hard slam it, it's not as terrible.
Yeah. I think like Japan is pretty unanimous on running not trying to jump guns, but I think like Japan is definitely on using the new fighter mode. And they're all running him at like 3. So that kind of just tells me that's like the 3 of 3 is fine because that means you're guaranteed to see it on average once per game, which is all you really need. Uh what does their option do?
So the option card, give me one sec here. So it has a main effect. You may play one free trade Digimon card from your trash with a play cost reduced by 5. So practically the idea is you play out the level 4s with this. Um,
Oh.
then you play it and place it in the battle area. Then it has an all turns when an opponent's security stack is removed from delay. You may play one Imperial Dramon Dragon mode from any of your Imperial Dramon fighter modes from the Digivolution cards without paying the play cost. So this is
Okay.
the idea of using that ace because the ace has the on play. I
Yeah.
don't think the one from EX3 has an on play, so
I think we probably would want one of that option wise because I think like the level sixes is a pretty easy like easy slots because you're obviously gonna want to run at least like 2 or 3 of the dragon modes from EX3, probably 1 or 2 of the dragon mode aces, and then 3 of the new fighter mode. I think that just feels mathematically correct. Because, like, the ace is okay. It's not great, but it's not terrible. Um, it's a DNA ace. So, like, I've been very lukewarm on DNA aces for the most part. So, like I said, it's not bad. It's just not fantastic. I think the old one's still just better. Um, then when it comes to the tamers and options, just to kind of like wrap this one up before we move on to the next deck. Um, I know analog is a mainstead, probably 3 or 4 analogs. I know you're probably going to want calling, so that way you have the cards in your hand. Probably like one scramble. Scrambles are just really good, especially in DNA decks, because you could use Scramble to bring out the Wormmon to be able to do all of this stuff, and then this is where you want like a memory setting tamer to snap yourself back. How often, actually, reading these cards, how often are we actually discarding cards? Is our only discard outlet literally just the Vmon?
uh so technically speaking the Vmon from EX3 is like a discard way, but
Yeah, is anything
kind of
else actually
theoretical
discarding?
I mean not really discarding, but analog kind of does like putting cards in your trash. And then also if you've already lost one stack, I mean then you have those materials in your trash kind of idea.
I get you. Cause like we were running the starter deck 16 mat, where it's just like when a card is discarded, you get to suspend him and gain a memory. He's just a memory setter. So maybe actually NPC is the better tamer. Like because if our the only other like good memory setting tamer that we have is probably like BT what
BT1 tie probably.
I mean, you could run BT1 tie if you're going for like big punchies. In terms of purple tamers, like it would probably just be BT2 Matt, I think.
Yeah.
Uh, like we don't really have that great of options, so maybe the NPC actually isn't that bad. because it's kind of like a pseudo scramble in a way.
Yeah, give me one
Because
second. I'm trying to
it does
see.
sacrifice your tamer, which is the unfortunate part, and we don't have ways to get it back. But if you're using it to try to like win the game, I guess that's fine. The only problem is it like conflicts with scramble, but I guess like it could just be a scramble. I don't know. I think maybe like a one of the battle NPC is cute. I do think like just being able to set up the Ken and Davis to be able to do stupid shenanigans is probably just better.
Yeah, I mean, because yeah, honestly, to me, like if I was to look for a purple base tamer, then I would probably go for that starter deck mat, one where you could just gain the memory back and everything. But that would rely on me wanting to play more of the EX3 V monster to have that consistency of discarding cards.
Yeah. I know when it comes to like actual discard math, because you do need cards in your trash, Missed Memory Boost is still always a good card. So probably
Mm-hmm.
like two Missed Memory
You?
Boosts, like two or three. I don't know. We're really like I'm already over on cards. I'm at 54 out of 50. So like I have to start making cuts somewhere. And that's the big problem. It's like where do I start
Yeah.
making cuts? Cuz I could cut like an analog. I could cut a Canon Davis cuz I only need to see one of it. But if I don't
Well,
see it
the
and I
other
don't have a way to get it back, then that's rough.
the other problem with the Canon Davis too is the fact that it's a blue green. So there's not a real good way for you to get it in hand unless you are using the BT13 BMON. You'd be hard drawing it because if you try to use wisdom trainings or anything like that, you're not going to get it whatsoever. And even the EX3 Warmon, if you see it, then it's just going to go to the deck bottom, and you can almost guarantee it's never going to be seen again.
Yeah. I'm just having a hard time cutting analog down. Like, I don't know how important Miss Memory Boost actually is. Like, is the deck that greedy where it needs the memory, especially if we have like memory fixing tamer and we have the Davis and Ken?
So it kind of depends. So back in EX3, what the idea of the deck was trying to do was kind of do the whole DNA Evo past the memory, and when that happened, you would be in the Imperial Dramon Dragon mode, which is why it has Blitz. So it's kind of like one of those. Because I'm give me one second here, because I'm trying to remember what the because there's something about the deck where it's like, oh, at the end of the turn your stack's deleted. Give me one second. I'm trying to pull up that
Yeah,
Imperial
because
Dramon
essentially
Dragon mode.
I'm on cut phase where it's just like if I'm running battle NPC, do I really need the purple scramble? Like certain cards are fulfilling similar roles that I don't necessarily think that we would need. So like I think if we are running battle NPC, then we just don't need purple scramble because they're kind of also conflicting with one another.
Yeah, the only reason you would want the purple scramble is just to make sure you don't deck out, because a lot
Yeah,
of the times
that's
you're going to be.
so we could probably cut the purple scramble then. Cuz I'm keeping at least the one calling. Well, maybe we could cut calling. I don't know. Like is it actually time to cut calling? Because basically, what I'm thinking of right now to fit the three cards in is like either cut the rookie down to 12 or cut the options.
So to me, I still like the idea of Colin still being at the one, due to the fact that, if like say your opponent gets rid of your stack and everything, I mean, you might already be in the losing point, but like just getting like to play the calling out to get a level 3 and a level 4 back in your hand to theoretically potentially even just try to come back and everything, like, because once your cards are in the trash, that's all you need. Like maybe you already have like a level 3 out on the well, you really don't want another level 3 out on the field, but uh yeah, because maybe it is time to actually cut calling if I think about it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, wait, is the math like it goes to what I sometimes phrase as like the math ain't mathin', where it's just like yeah, we have the ability to just grab back almost anything anyway from our trash, so like we really don't need calling. And calling is only good just to delete our Digimon just to reset, but like our Digimon does that for us anyway, so yeah, like I think we just do cut it. So essentially, and then I'm just cutting the rookie because I think where decks are at, we don't need 14 rookies anymore. So I'll kind of like rapid fire the list off for you. So we are running 4 Pronominomon, 4 EX3 Vmon, 4 BT16 Wormmon, 4 EX3 Wormmon. So that's eggs and rookies. Then
Yep,
going on
sounds good to
to
me.
level 4s, 2 BT20 XVs, 2 EX3 Flames, 2 BT20 Sting, 2 EX3 Shadramon, and then 4 Promo Shadramon.
Maybe cut the two XV mons.
I mean, I could probably instead of the 2 XV mons, I could probably just cut a Sting and an XV because we still kind of need the colors. Actually, we might just be able to cut the Sting entirely just to keep the 4 on the colors.
Yeah, because I mean, you already have retaliation with with one of the Wormmon, so it's like you really don't want to have a stack with retaliation twice.
Yeah. So I think the Sting is an easier cut. Um then uh how many so I could probably get away with 11 level 4s then. So it would be 2 XVs, 2 flames, 4 promo shots, 3 um normal shots.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Then when it comes to the level 5s, I have 1 BT20 Sting, 4 or not Sting, Dino B, 4 BT16 Dino B, then 2 EX3 Pyeel, and 2 BT20 Pyeel.
What's the deck count at currently? Just out of curiosity.
51, or it's at 50.
It's at 50. Then yeah, those could potentially stay for now. Although I would potentially even art. I might even say that because we're not even running the ace, are we?
We're running one of Ace. So the level sixes is 3 EX3 Dragon modes, 1 Dragon mode Ace, and then 3 BT20 Fighter mode.
Uh, I would. Part of me wants to say to cut maybe just one of the Pyildramons. Probably the newest one.
Cut one of the newer ones.
Yeah, I think cutting one of the newer ones, just because of the fact that we're not running too heavy into the whole ace play. So it's like if we see a Flame Dramon in, or not Flame Dramon, a Pyildramon in our hand, then we just have it ready for if we so like. It's just trying to have the perfect setup of Flame Dramon on the field or in your hand with the Dino B on the hand or field, along with that one of ace. You might not even see it. It could even potentially even be in your security. Could be at the bottom of your deck. So just like trying to rely too heavily on the Hyildramons, just to me, it's like for someone that's a one of, it's like not that good of an idea.
So are we gonna dump it back into the EX3 pile then, or are we just going to use it for a consistency tool card?
I would use it as a consistency tool card because it still kind of has like there is still like so here's how I see it. The BT16 BT20 Hyildramon has the nice little play of giving one of your guys, 4,000 DP and then attacking. Like, say if you have the Dino B and with Partition and the BT20 Flame Pyldramon, use him to have your Dino B swing at your opponent and then say it does the check and everything, clears out, lives. The fact that you might even potentially have the Flame Dramon or the Shade Dramon from EX3 underneath that can activate the end of turn to DNA again. So it resets yourself back up to go into the EX3 Dragon Mode Blitz. Kind of is my idea of thinking. Like just having that as a nice one of tech is
Okay.
my idea of thinking.
Okay. But you're okay with the level 6s though, right?
Yeah, the level sixes are fine. I mean, part of me would like the idea of running maybe one of the old uh fighter mode, but the more I think about it, the more is that BT20 just sounds so much better.
I think
Because
just
we've
the
seen how,
floodgate. Yeah, just big
yes,
floodgates are very important right now. That's my perspective is like if you're not OTKing, you better have good floodgate to stop the opponent's game plan so you could then win on the follow up.
hmm
Then when it comes to tamers, this is where things are gonna get a little interesting. I'm running two Davis and Kens from BT16, two battle NPCs, and then four analog youths. Because we cut the scrambles, so I'm deciding to go harder into battle NPC as the pseudo scramble.
I might almost even argue you might not even need to run the whole battle NPC if we're running the Davis and Ken. Just because of how Davis and Ken works, it kind of gets you the memory back,
Well, so
so
the
to say.
idea is if you have both Battle NPC and Davis and Ken, because both of their abilities are at the start of the main phase, you could trigger Battle NPC while you have an empty field to essentially play out two Digimon in combination with Davis and Ken. So it just makes
Yeah,
it
that
even
works.
easier to do whatever the heck you want. And then Battle NPC is also a generic memory setter, so that's also pretty decent. So that way we're not memory choked. um, I think like it's a pretty fun, cute little card that I think is gonna have a hard time finding a lot of homes, and this is one of the few places where it actually could have a home. Not saying that
Yeah,
justifies the card or not. Like maybe scrambles are just better, or taking out the Davis account or just lowering it. I don't know. Again, still got to play test and experiment, but this is just the initial craft. Um, so two Davis Ken, two battle NPCs, four analogs. So a little heavier on the tamer count, but all of our tamers are very impactful. And then when it comes to options, I'm running one Emperor Dragon of Calamity and three Mist Memory Boost. So,
um,
because Mist is still good at just putting cards, like,
yeah.
in terms of overall card economy, Mist is insanely efficient because milling two and drawing one, it is mill two, then draw one. Yeah, mill two, then draw one means for a deck like this, all three cards are potentially useful. And if they're not useful, it's getting you pretty close to whatever is going to be useful. So
Yeah.
having all three cards at least be something like be having access at them is pretty good. And then I see Japan running only one Dragon Emperor of Calamity because I think like you don't this doesn't feel like a card that you would want more than two of. Like it's cute when it happens, but it's not needed because there's just so many other things and playlines the deck can do to where it just doesn't 100% need it, but it's not a bad card.
So here's an idea here. What do you think about this card from, let me see, where is it? BT6. It's called Galvin Memory Boost.
Oh, Glaive Memory
So,
Boost?
or Glaive,
Um
yes, thank you. I was going to butcher that. Because it kind of works like that, how the mat does from BT2.
yeah, but we're not trying to retrieve things because our cards already retrieve them for us. We're trying to put cards into our trash. That's the problem. And that's why we decided to cut the calling is because most of the time like there's only few instances where like we don't really have anything and we need something in our trash to get going. Like but that's a far and few in between instance, especially if we have like a whole bunch of consistency cards like Mist and Analog to be able to dig us what we are trying to find. And then by the time we're in the mid to late stages of the game or pulling off our combo, then grabbing a card back from our trash isn't really that great because we're using our cards to play them out anyway.
True. Yeah, but just part of me wanted to have like something in case if maybe I milled something that I would need to have like because there I think one of the problems the deck had was just the consistency situation of like ooh I really needed that a level three to have in raising to potentially go for my big combos and everything.
Yeah, so if we put in, like, I mean, but again, calling fulfills that role pretty easily. So if we put in the calling, then we have to take out most likely either a tamer or cut a mist. So, like, we would have to cut a Davis and Ken or a battle NPC or an analog just to find the space. Either that or we're cutting another Digimon, which we're already pretty tight on our Digimons.
I would say it would be a analog youth
Cut an analog.
potentially.
I could see that because like analog, it's good, but it's not gaining us the memory until our Digimon is deleted. It's just a 2-drop searching tool. So between the 3 analogs and 3 mists, hopefully that should be good enough then, consistency wise, to be able to find whatever we need, and then calling helps us grab back that. So I think that's fine. So with that, that's probably the build then. So we changed the option lineup to 1 Dragon Emperor Calamity, 1 Calling from the Darkness, and 3 Mist Memory Boost. And then we changed the analog from 4 to 3. If you're audioly following along. So that's our 50 card deck for an initial theory craft of Virus Imperial. Uh, I obviously think that the deck needs some testing in order to say if this is good or not, but like this is kind of just a good experiment on how we could go about using the data that we have to be able to formulate how we could better support the deck with the newer cards and be able to revamp and reinvigor this type of deck, so to speak. So we could do this approach all day, essentially, but I think we're getting late enough on the podcast to where we're probably going to have to call it here. I would have liked to experiment a little bit more with other decks, but I think just the sheer amount of thought experiments that was going on is always really fun just to see what we could come up with. So, anything about the deck that you feel like you would want to change, or do you think this is pretty good for
I think
like a
it's a
build zero essentially?
yeah, I think this is a really good base start and everything. Obviously, it's just going to depend on how the meta is going to form and see what needs to get changed. Because I know in my original build zero of my deck, I had wisdom trainings in there to be consistent, but also reduce the evo cost of my say level fours and everything, make them free, so I could just cheat out, doing my DNA plays and everything.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of different tech that you could include, and Japan is still obviously experimenting with tech. This definitely seems like it's going to be one of the more popular decks. At least, again, looking at Japanese data, this is what they're more excited about playtesting and iterating on, just because it actually turned like it got enough tools to where it actually is it could be a very competitive deck. Like it was already on the cusp of being competitive. It just there was something lacking to where it wasn't quite there, and I think like this gives it enough tools to be able to have it find its competitive success, and I think that's kind of cool. So feel free to criticize our deck again down in the comments below, or tell us any thoughts and opinions that you would have to change to the deck. And this kind of is like like a little not really behind the curtains, but like this is just our process on how we would go about formulating decks, and even without Japanese data, we would still have some of these ideas already running through our head, where it's just like we're looking at the pool of cards that we already were working with, and then take what was newly added and try to figure out how to better support the deck as a whole. Because I know like Battle NPC as just an example is like fulfilling a very similar role to Scramble. So it's like, okay, we were running Scramble before. This is obviously a more expensive card, but it can have bigger payoffs because it also is replacing itself, cycling, making the deck more consistent, being a memory fixer. So it has like its own sets of pros and cons. but it's essentially fulfilling a very similar role. So that's kind of just a little example on, even without Japanese data, you should still be looking at the card pool to see what you can do to better support or even just build the deck. Because some of their decks are not great, and some of the tools that they give you are kind of awful. So, yeah, I'm looking at you, Excel. You're just a hot mess. I got a lot of work to do with that one. But yeah. So, any last thoughts, Jay Stewart, about the deck and just your approach to deck building in a nutshell?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I could think of is when it comes to the Imperial deck, it, like I kind of mentioned earlier during the process, is deciding whether you're going to go red base or purple bases might be the kind of deciding factor of how you might even make your decisions and everything. Because if you go red base, you might not even care for Minomon and actually use other cards like Koromon from BT 14 or something like that to get draw consistency or something like that.
Yeah, I totally forgot Minomon was another discard outlet. If you wanted to like swap out battle NPC for Matt, like what we were used to doing, and then that gives you the opportunity to run the scrambles. But again, this is just my brain spinning on all of the possibilities. Um, and I think like just from a deck building perspective, new sets are always fun to experiment and explore with. So I hope this helped you kind of just get a little bit of insight on how to kind of just go about deck building. You don't always have to, like, the one thing I know is a big misconception is it almost feels like cheating when you're like net decking, but like when I was in design school, one thing they taught me was don't reinvent the wheel. Like the wheel's already made. It's already a circle that lets things move. So why am I wasting my time trying to reinvent something that doesn't need to be? Which is why I feel like it's okay to use like the Japanese data and past data to be able to assess where to start and then look at the new stuff to be able to figure out where to continue. So even though come unification we won't have hardcore Japanese data to look at beforehand, I don't think that necessarily matters because we'll still have, for the most part, almost the exact same information. It's just we don't have other people's ideas as much to go off of. But that's the fun of a new set in a TCG. So, but I think that's going to be good for this episode. Thank you, Jay Stewart, for coming on as always. It's great to have your perspective, and I think this was definitely a really fun thought experiment for a good build zero of a possible Imperial list come Special Booster 1. Or not 1.5, 2.5. So feel free, anyone, to take this deck and iterate on it. By all means, that's what it's here for. So, with that, I want to thank everyone for coming out and listening. I know this was a little bit of a longer one, but it was definitely interesting to do something a little bit different with the podcast format. I know audially it's a little bit harder than it is visually, but thankfully Spotify lets us do video podcasts as well. So, hooray! But outside of that, I hope everyone found this episode to be helpful and informative, and we hope to see you all in the next episode. Later.